How do you stop feeling overworked and overtired during your PhD? And the answer is actually really quite simple. You're not going to like the answer because most of you have been trained, programmed, or you have the personality type that you're not going to want to listen to me. But here is the answer to stop feeling overworked and overtired during your PhD. Just stop. That's it. Stop doing the things that are making you feel like that. Stop perceiving yourself as you are imperfect, that you're problematic. Stop trying to compete with the outside world. Stop trying to be the best in everything. This is an incredibly difficult thing to do. I admit it. It's very difficult. And many personality types might not be able to do this. I know in my relationship, so with my wife and I was thinking about that. So with me, I kind of have this thing where I'm okay with uncertainty, right? And there's all this uncertainty that happens when you're doing a PhD, and it's really, really enticing to think that, hey, I could put in a little bit more work. I don't necessarily have to brush my teeth. I didn't comb my hair this morning going for a walk. I don't have to comb my hair. I don't have to do any of these kind of things. And I need to devote my time to work. I need to actually get this stuff done. And for me, I can say no. I can turn that off. But I know in my relationship, my wife would have a much more difficult time with doing that. And the reason is that her identity, who she is a lot more tied to the success of everything. And I'm a little less like that. But that doesn't mean I'm not tied to the notion of success. I love that. I want to be the number one. But I've had to learn to turn it off. If there is moments, and by the way, she hasn't done a PhD, but if there are moments that are going on in your life that you kind of feel out of hand, you kind of feel like it's not working out for you, and you're feeling overtired, and you're feeling overworked, I want you to just start thinking like that you can stop this. It's up to you. It's a personal choice. This is your thing. You are driving it. You can turn everything off. And I know that all of you are going to come up with all sorts of excuses to say, well, I can't do this because I have this project due. I can't do this because I have this deadline. And I can't. But the reality is who's imposing those things? It's you. You are the one that's actually determining what is going on in your life. And that requires a whole bunch of work that goes on in your brain. That requires you taking a step back and thinking about what you is, whatever this character of what you mean, who you are. This requires you to take a step back and say, is my identity tied to that work? Is that who I am? That work thing? Now, if you are, then go have at her, right? Like that's an amazing thing. That is who you are. But if you're feeling like this, if you're feeling this moment where you are like, oh gosh, I can't deal with this, and I'm ready to break, then you need to start making some tough decisions in your mind. You have to really start thinking about who I am. What does this mean? What is this all about? And when you start doing that, start thinking about what of the things that I need to do, I actually need to do. And you realize that there's not a lot of things that you actually need to do. And you're going to be okay with anything that you choose. And that is a very hard thing to come to terms with, that you are going to be okay with all of the things that you choose. It doesn't have to be the number one. It doesn't have to be the sort of best thing. You can actually be okay with how you're living, with who you are at this moment. This is a deeply, deeply difficult thing for all of us to deal with. And I remember the moment where, there's been a couple of moments where I've had to reassess who I am. And I think that's perhaps why I deal a little bit better with this kind of stuff than my wife. The first one that happened was, so early on during my PhD, it was actually the first year of my PhD, both of my dads had cancer, and they actually both died. So my father-in-law and my dad both died in December of the year that I started my PhD, which started in September. And there's all these demands all the time, and I didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to deal with it, but I knew I had to get up and get going and just keep working at the thing that I was working at. And I kind of snapped inside, where I detached a lot from reality, which was very helpful, because then I was able to detach a little bit from the reality of what was going on in my home life and then what was going on in work life. And I separated those things pretty well. And I was able to get through. Didn't get through well, both of them, and they were both very, very challenging, and we had all sorts of discussions. Let's just say that. But it was very challenging. Now, another moment, and it's kind of ongoing for me, and you could probably see these moments where I put in a great deal of work on something, and it will be a project that I'll be working on, and I'll put in all this work, 6 months or whatever of work, and I'll submit it someplace, and then I'll get rejected. And each one of those times that happens, it breaks me a little bit inside. Probably a lot of it, but it's a little bit. And each one of those times that happens to me, I take a step back and I say, is this who I am? Is this how I define myself? Am I actually the product of this work that I'm creating? And the answer almost always in my mind is no, it's not. It's just a damn job. And it doesn't really matter in the end. I think about that, and I've had time to reflect, and this is one thing that we do as, thoughtful people, is I've had time to reflect on that. What is going to happen when I'm at 80 years old, or I'm at 90 or 100 or some number, and, I've sort of lived a full life? I want to think about that. And what's going to happen in my life? How is everybody going to perceive what I am? And what does that mean? And as I sort of think about those moments, what does it actually mean to live a full life? Even at the age of 80, what does that mean? And my answer is always the same, is I can't determine what goes on in the outside world, outside of my body. I really can't. The only thing I could do is get up, enjoy who I am, maybe give somebody my dogs a good petting, a good hard petting. They like that. Do some work, enjoy my family, and go home. And that's the only thing I can actually do, is every day just do a little bit of work, enjoy who I am, try to smile while I do it, and I know that's hard to do, but smile when I do it, and go home. And it's a big philosophical difference that requires a lot of work in determining who you are as a person. What does that look like? Why do you do the things that you do? And if you're determined to be somebody that is determined by success, that the only thing that actually matters is that thing where you have a ribbon, where you're the number one, go have at her. That's a lovely trait, but it's not the thing that I actually am. And I've had to determine that that is okay. That being last is okay, but you tried. And I think that's the more important thing. Figuring out how you're going to deal with losing, figuring out how you're going to deal with just, all right, this is the world. That's where you have to go and take those long introspective looks where you say, am I going to live like that? Is that me? And if the answer is no, then you have to do the hard work of figuring out, what am I going to say no to? And how am I actually going to do this? What does that look like? That's your choice. But ultimately, if you feel overworked and overtired, that is your choice. And that's where you have to do the hard work to actually deal with it.